Hello, my name is Glenn Robinson. I want to welcome you to a Resurf 2 general purpose polymer concrete training video. You'll see quite a few details here that really matter in the field. Here we're showing first that mixing a small amount of primer. And I suggest at this point that if you have not looked at the label directions and the tips for detailed installation of Resurf 2 polymer concrete, you consider pausing here and going forward after reading those, or you can read them at any time. Here we're priming the surface of the pothole to be repaired, and I call your attention to the fact that it really only primed rather wet but up high to use gravity and capillary traction to wet down the surface of the the Portland cement concrete. I'll come back to actually both these potholes and reprime after the primer, which is basically the same Resurf resin, same catalyst, same ratio as used for the monolithic. You'll see in a couple of minutes. But you want to basically wet through any crippled sand that may have blown in with traffic from the highway or the wind. Just scrub through that. You notice here I missed a small spot on the other pothole, which I'll notice here in just a second, and go ahead and prime it out also. You probably noticed when we catalyzed, we'll show this a couple of times, when we catalyze the resin, a color change from a pinkish purple to a greenish brown. You'll see that every time you catalyze the resin. Here we're going back to the basic directions: 1 gallon of catalyzed resin, basically 1 mark on the catalyst bottle, to 1 gallon of resin, which is 1 mark on the gallon pail, to 1 bag of Resurf 2 aggregate blend. Here you'll see where we added the 1 mark of catalyst to the 1 gallon. You're going to see a color change. The reason that this is being done, you see here it says resin for 1 bag on the pail. The reason that we're doing it this way, if you have a wheelbarrow that leaks, and for some reason this one does, you add your aggregate blend to the wheelbarrow first, and so you don't have nearly the leak problem. Normally, if you have a good newer wheelbarrow, you would add the resin, catalyzed resin in first. It's a little bit easier to do that and then just spread the Resurf 2 aggregate blend in on top of it. But this technique works, a very little difference. And after a wheelbarrow's been used for, as this one has, for several years, they do tend to have a leak here and there, but this will take care of that. Now, coming up here is the only natural sound that we left in the video, and the reason is so you can hear the scraping to the bottom of the wheelbarrow pretty much on each stroke, and that's very important. Good mixing makes the product perform better, handle better. The quicker you can mix it and the better you mix it, the easier it works for the guys finishing. Normally a crew doing this would be between 2 and 4 men. Right here you're seeing that I'm doing it and doing each step of the process along the way. We'll mix 3 small batches here, or 3 different size small batches here, and I'll call your attention to this one. This one is 1 bag, which is a half cubic foot, 1 gallon, 1 mark. I have some comments too here on surface prep. When you're hulling out spall concrete here, normally you whittle it back to the point where it tapers out and feather edges out. If there's much of a vertical component along that feathered edge, chances are you didn't get all the crippled concrete chipped out. Small pieces of 2x4 are ideal finishing tools, and the more of them you have and the variety of sizes and the cleaner they are, the easier your job is. They act as effective tamps, screeds, and even trowels. And here, if you can think about going with the flow of traffic, you always want to taper up if it need be, or even taper down to existing slab to smooth out the ride for the public at least a little bit. Here I'm moving it forward with a round pointed shovel. You'll see in the photograph that all the tools and containers and the product staged. There's a square end shovel. That's much more effective for moving the product forward to the next primed pothole. And also you'll see some effort to pick up what I call cow patties. When you drop some polymer concrete on the slab, it's always nice to slice it off, move it forward if you can quickly. If you catch it later, just slice them up while they're still in the cheesy stage, and you won't have any bumps on your surrounding concrete surface. This is actually a very good technique here to pull the edges back at that feathered edge. There won't be any porosity in it. It'll pull back while it's in a plastic stage like that. A little bit of dry mix on top of the surface there will assure that you've got no wet spots. I deliberately worked this batch a little bit on the wet side, just a little wetter than label directions call for, because the repairs are so shallow. That makes it a little bit easier to feather edge them. Later, and I'll discuss later, about mixing not only with a wheelbarrow but with a mortar mixer, and go through the details of why and how we mix with a mortar mixer and the techniques that will keep you out of trouble with that. This next batch, it's obvious that repair is not going to take a full other bag or another half cubic foot. I'm mixing about 3/4 of a batch, which is probably a little under 0.4 cubic feet. You'll notice the pink color of the resin here, when it's catalyzed, quickly changes to a greenish brown. It does not take much to mix it at all. It's very low viscosity and wets in very well. This smaller batch is very easy to mix. You're probably talking about 30 to 45 seconds of mix time, particularly if you aggressively get after it. Probably the best man that you got there needs to be mixing batches, because he'll mix them quicker and better, and they'll finish better for the guys doing the finishing. If pretty much each stroke hits the bottom of the wheelbarrow and you mix it quickly like this, it makes the product perform better, makes the finisher's job much easier. The general bag instructions and the details for installation, detailed tips for installation of Resurf 2 are kind of a hard copy of what you'll be doing, and pretty well what's shown here. Since this is a roughly shallow repair and simulates we had a straight edge on each side, this is pretty well the technique that you'd use for any place you had a join on a small bridge deck, or any place on panel pavement, or a construction centerline joint, even on CRCP. Here again, pulling that edge back does make a little bit of difference and does help. And a little bit of leftover aggregate blend, or a little bit out of the next batch. Here's scraping off the cow patties. A square end shovel. You don't want to put too much of this mix that's contaminated and picked up things in the next hole. Scrapings like that sometimes are penny wise and dollar foolish.